Hi, everybody. This is Mrs. M or Mrs. Mizoguchi, and I'm here to read you Chapter 2, Don't Run Down the Clinic Hallway. When David was 3 and started coming to the clinic for occupational therapy, I tagged along because I was too little to stay home alone. Now I'm 12 and I can stay home if I want, but I still like to come. I like talking to Mom on the ride over and back. I like shopping in the stores across the street, and I love the road between our house and the clinic. It follows the ocean shoreline, and I look for snowy egrets standing stick still in the salt marshes and ospreys circling, hunting fish. At high tide, waves sparkle under the wooden bridges, and I can guess the tide before I even see the water, just by closing my eyes and breathing in the air through the open window. Low tide smells mud black and tangy, but high tide smells clean and salty. The clinic is a few streets from the ocean, and in the summer, sometimes Mom and I walk to the waterfront park while David has his appointment. It's the only time a week that I get Mom completely to myself, and someone else is in charge of David. Mom likes to stay in the clinic waiting room so she can hear if David has a hard time. But I like it when we leave because she doesn't look away from me every time she hears him shriek. At the clinic, there is a waiting room and a long corridor of doors to little offices for hearing tests, speech therapy, and occupational therapy. David comes on Tuesdays and Thursdays to see Stephanie, a woman with kind eyes and an office full of games, swings, a trampoline, and more balls than I've ever seen outside a school playground. I think it'd be fun to go with Stephanie and do what she calls playing, but David thinks it's work. I wait while Mom says hello to the other waiting room people. But as soon as Stephanie takes David's hand, I ask, can we go to the park? We haven't been since last fall. It's going to rain, Mom sits down on the waiting room couch. It'll be cold by the water. You didn't even bring a jacket. Can we go shopping then? I glance out the window to the line of stores across the street. My favorite is Elliot's Antiques. From the sidewalk, it seems only a door tucked between two downtown shops, but behind the door and up a musty-smelling staircase is a sign, Elliot's Antiques. The whole store is like an attic, full of someone's stuff grandparents once owned, but had no more use for. Things not quite good enough to keep, but not quite bad enough to throw away. David had a hard time last week, Mom says. I need to make sure Stephanie can handle it. Why don't we read? Mom crosses her legs, like she's settled to stay. I slump on the couch beside her and check to see if anyone looks like they'd mind Mom reading out loud. I haven't been to the clinic since my last school vacation, but I recognize the waiting room people because their appointments are nearly the same time as David's every week. Mrs. Frost, a tiny old lady, reads a magazine in the big chair between the front windows. She brings her even older brother for speech therapy because he had a stroke. The receptionist with her blonde beauty parlor hair types fast on her computer. Carol, a young mother wearing a big skirt and hoop earrings, sits in a rocking chair near the bookshelf. She leans down, handing her baby with Down syndrome chunky plastic blocks from the toy basket. In the chair next to the exit, Mrs. Morehouse, Jason's mother, checks her watch. And there's Jason. I'm not sure how old Jason is, maybe 14 or 15. But even though he's almost grown, his mother stays with him in the waiting room. Jason can't go anywhere unless someone pushes his wheelchair. I open my backpack, and Mom cleans her glasses on the bottom edge of her shirt. When I was 7, Mom began reading the Harry Potter series to me, and even though I can read it easily to myself now, we still read each new book together. I never think of the characters without hearing her voice. I pass her the book. She turns to our chapter, and I arrange my colored pencils on the couch next to me. Hunting out the window for something to draw, I consider the lines of the stores and the restaurants across the street, but they look tired in between. In a week or two, the gift shop window will have splashy beach towels and plastic sand buckets. The hotel will show off the no lit up with a vacancy sign, and the parking lot will be full of seagulls strutting between the cars and perched on the street lights searching for someone to drop a bit of sandwich or French fry. I wish time would hurry and there'd be sailboats tied up at the landing and tour buses passing through, and I'd already have the first hellos traded with somebody Peterson, the girl next door. I figure by 5:15 that first high trading could be over, especially if I just happen to be outside at 5 o'clock when she arrives. I sink back into the vinyl couch cushions, my sketchbook propped against my knees, listening to Mom's voice changing character to character. There's not much new to draw in the waiting room. The same yellowed awards cluster the walls. The same books spill off the bookshelves, and the same old toys are heaped in the toy basket. And there are only two people I haven't already drawn, Jason and his mother. I worry that glancing will turn into staring easily with Jason, and I hate it when people stare at David. But Jason's mother fidgets, crossing her legs, picking up magazines, putting them down, smoothing her short, flipped under brown hair, so she'd be harder to draw. Mom said Jason just started coming to the clinic after Christmas, but the first time I saw him was February vacation. That day, I didn't know where to look, so I looked at his feet on the wheelchair footrests. Maybe by drawing Jason, I could look at him easier. Looking closer can make something beautiful. Sometimes I can change how I feel about something by drawing it. Drawing makes me find the curves, the shadows, the ins, the outs, and the beautiful parts. I solved my hating snakes by drawing their scales, tiny and silvery, overlapping and overlapping, until all I saw was how perfect they were. Can't say as I want a snake crawling across me, but I don't have to run screaming to Dad every time I see a garter snake now. Should I go on? Mom asked. I could stop there. No, keep reading. I turned to a clean page of my sketchbook and swooped a faint pencil line, beginning the outline of Jason's head, over the top, down his temple and cheek, around the bumps of his jaw and chin, and back to where my line began. I don't know what's wrong with Jason, and it doesn't seem polite to ask. Whatever it is, though, it's something big. There's a tray on Jason's wheelchair, and on top of the tray is a communication book. At first, Jason's book seems like a big blue photograph album, but inside is full of word cards, not photographs. This is an example of some of the communication words that you might see. Jason can't speak, but he turns the pages and touches the cards to tell his mother if he wants a drink or has to use the bathroom or is mad about something. Today, he's mad, biting mad. Jason slides a hand across the book, looking at his cards. His fingers claw like his knuckle raps one word after another. Yes, I know they had a guitar, Mrs. Morehouse said, finding her earring. But I told you we didn't have time to stop. If I'd stopped, you'd have been late for speech. Jason stabs his book. I hope he has a "so what" or a "whatever" card. His hands twitch and he makes rumbling sounds near to growling. Mom shuts our book. Jason's jaw is a little crooked. Not as perfect as I drew, but if I draw how it really is, it might look like I made a mistake. Reddish-brown waves of hair sweep over Jason's brow. A few wayward strands dangle near his eyes. Hair's my favorite thing to draw, but I only rough it in. Otherwise, I might have to have time to finish it before Jason's speech therapist comes to get him. What? Jason's asks. I'll draw his eyes downcast, looking at his book. That way they'll mostly be lids, and it won't matter. I don't know what color they are. Girl. Don't. What girl? Everything falls quiet. I glance up. Miss Morehouse is staring at me. Are you drawing my son? My pencil freezes mid-stroke. Just because he can't talk, don't assume he doesn't mind. Everyone looks at me. My fingers move over my sketchbook. Finding the corner. I'm sorry, I whisper. On the page, it takes all my strength, every ounce, not to cry. A drink? I hear Mrs. Miles. All right, wait here. Mom reaches over, but I scoot down the couch, out of reach. Pick up a lime-colored pencil and swish a tiny blade of grass on my page. One eyelash curve of green cutting all that white. Footsteps pass me, but I don't look up. I take a line after line, making grass. Oops, said Mrs. Morehouse. It's only a spill. I risk a peek. If that were David, he'd be wild to get those clothes off. But Jason sits there, a dark water spot spread on the front of his navy red sox shirt. Maybe he doesn't mind. Or maybe he knows there isn't another shirt. Or maybe he's used to being wet. David wouldn't care about any of those things. That shirt would be off faster than you could blink. And pants, too, if any had spilled on there. And I didn't remind him of the pants rule quick enough. Keep your pants on, unless Mom and Dad or the doctor tell you to take them off. Mom opens our book again. Let's see, where were we? Harry was about to use his cloak. That's right. As she reads, I think how useful a cloak that made me invisible would be right now. If I had one, I'd throw it over my head, run out the door, across the parking lot and the street, all the way to the waterfront park to the wharf, and board the first boat I saw going somewhere, anywhere else. Mom reads. The receptionist types at her computer. Mrs. Frost looks at a magazine. The baby sleeps on Carol's lap, his little fingers still clutching that pink block. Hi, Jason! Jason's smiling speech therapist finally comes out to get him. I'm relieved to see her, even though Mom stops reading when she comes. How's his day been going? The therapist asked his mother. He wanted to stop at a yard sale, Mrs. Morehouse said, so he's upset. Oh, the therapist points to Jason. You wanted to stop at a yard sale? She says, with her her eyebrows up in a question, her fingers flying everywhere. Jason scowls. His therapist points her finger at the book and pouch and says, sad. I swallowed a giggle. Sad? Is she kidding? If I were Jason, I want cards that say, get out of my face, go away, and this stinks, a big one. The therapist pushes Jason's wheelchair down the corridor, and Mrs. Morehouse picks up her purse. I have a couple of errands, she tells the receptionist. I'll be right back. The bell above the clinic door jangles as she leaves. Through the window, I watch her cross the parking lot to her van. What do you think Jason would do with a guitar? I ask Mom. I don't know, she says. Maybe just having one would be enough. Watching the van's taillights, I wonder, enough for what? But as the van pulls away, I close my eyes and make a wish. Please go back and buy that guitar. In case Mom's right. I didn't mean to hurt Jason's feelings. I was only sketching. You could tell him that, Mom says. I cringe, but he can't answer me. Maybe he'll point to an answer in his book, or maybe he'll answer in his head. Mom returns to reading, and I draw the front of a gray shingled house, porch steps, and a front door with a doorbell. I reach for a blue sky pencil, but I pick up midnight black instead. I hear a faraway David shriek, and Mom stops reading to watch the corridor. But then it's quiet, and I figured David gave in and did whatever Stephanie wanted. My drawing tape shape under my hand, lemon for the stars, cream for the moon, and pine for the trees. Along the fence, charcoal gray for the darkened windows, all but one. When a clinic bell jingles again, I peek up, enough to see Jason's mother isn't holding a guitar. Here we are! The speech therapist pushes Jason's wheelchair up beside me. I saw you drive in, she said to his mother. He was so upset. We stopped early. Mom slides her eyebrow to cover. Mom slides her elbow over in a here's your chance. Catherine nudge. Hi, Jason, she says. How are you today? His head still bowed, his chin almost touching his chest. Mom's question hangs in the air. Maybe Jason's answering his head. Maybe he's saying, I'm fine, thank you. Or maybe, well, I've been better. Or maybe he's screaming, I'm in this wheelchair, you idiot. How am I supposed to feel? Whatever he's thinking, his silence stings me. I lay my sketchbook on my lap. I'm sorry about that guitar. I tell the reddish-brown waves on Jason's head. I like music, too. His head snaps up. Jason stares hard right into my eyes. His eyes are stunning ice blue. Mrs. Morehouse spins his chair toward the door, and Mom stands up to help. It's okay, Miss Morehouse holds the door open with her foot. I can get it. Pick up my palest yellow pencil and add a dot to my drawing, gleaming in a window. From the dot, I sweep down a shivering beam, cutting the darkness. I imagine myself sitting on my bed, hugging my knee, counting Morse code dashes and dots. Are you there? The bells jangle again. I look up to see Mrs. Morehouse in the doorway, watching me. She crosses her arms across her stomach. Mrs. Frost drops her magazines, and even the receptionist has stopped typing, her hands held above her keyboard like an instructor waiting for a conductor waiting to cue a symphony. Jason insisted I come back, Mrs. Morehouse said, and tell you he likes the picture you're drawing. She turns to leave. I looked out the window to Jason at the top of the ramp. Wait! Lifting my page, I pull it just so gently so it'll tear neatly. Colored pencils fall off my lap, scattering and falling across the floor, but I don't bother with them. If he likes it, he can have it. Please tell him the dot in the window is a flashlight. His mother smiles. I'll tell him. I'm too embarrassed to watch her give Jason my picture, so I go down on my knees and hunt for colored pencils, some of which have rolled under the heater. That was kind of you, sweetheart, Mom said. I slumped back on the couch. So I moved my orange colored pencil over a fresh page. I'm only making lines. Too busy to talk lines. Leave me alone lines. I bear down so hard my pencil lead breaks. Sorry, gotta go. David runs through the waiting room, heading for the door outside. His brown hair damp with sweat. Mom jumps to block his way. To flip my rule collection, I flip to my rule collection and add, if you want to get away with something, don't announce it first. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you really enjoyed that chapter 2 of Rules.